Alright, I want to show you how to use DESMOS so that you can figure out some of the characteristics of the equations that we've been talking about. So one of the things that you should notice is that over here on the left hand side is where you enter the equations. And you do so by selecting the keyboard down here. The keyboard allows you to be able to access all of the keys that are necessary in order to create these equations. So now we're just going to click on some of the other features so that you can see what happens when we put them in the graph area. So I've turned on the colors for the two lines, and you can see that the red line is the straight line, obviously, and the blue graph is the circle. And we'll learn a little bit more about circle equations later. But what I did want you to notice is that if we change the circle equation, instead of being equal to, if we make it so that it is less than, it actually fills in the circle so that you can see the inside. So if you'd want to make a drawing that has a filled in circle, you just use your inequalities, because inequalities allow us to shade in regions. Also notice that if you use the less than or equal to sign instead of just the less than sign, it will give you a solid circle. So the next function we're going to put in is the absolute value function, and you'll notice that it's down on your keyboard. So I'm going to change it up just a little bit and identify the function so that we have function f of x equals the absolute value of x. And so now that I have that function and it's identified as being green, I can actually change the location of that green line by giving another function. I'm going to say function g of x is equal to f of x plus 3. And so now when we look at f of x plus 3, notice, now we're looking at the purple graph here, so you'll notice that this purple graph, which is identified by that equation, has shifted over to the left by 3. 1, 2, 3. Looking at the vertex, you can tell that it shifted over by 3, which is kind of an interesting thing to play around with, because now you can move things. You know what the basic equation is, or the parent function, and you can move things around by making adjustments to the input. Now that will shift, changing the input will shift things left and right, like this did, and if we wanted to make it go up and down, we would have to change on the output. So let me do that real quick for you. Okay, so as I indicated, I changed the output, so I still have the same input. My x's didn't change. I left it as x, but instead I added a 6, and look what happened from the green graph up to the orange graph. It went up by 6. So the green graph was just absolute value of x. The orange graph took the absolute value and added 6 to it, so it just jumped it up there. So using those techniques, you can put your graphs anywhere you want them. So you can combine these two features and actually put an absolute value way over here if you want. So now we have this new equation that has a combination of the two different shifts that we did. We have a shift up by 3 and a shift right by 6. And so now our black line represents that. It's colored black as we indicated here. Now just in case you don't like these colors, you can hold down your key, the color indicator, and it will give you a color palette and you can pick from there. So I'm just going to change this black one and make it blue. Okay, and you can change all of the different lines to be different colors, however you want to do it. Another thing you should notice is that you can unselect the boxes or the little circles, those colored circles, to turn those lines off if you want to work with one thing in particular, but you want all the other stuff turned off. They're still there because you can click back on them and they'll be there, but if you want to just clear your palette so that you aren't bothered by it. And that's what I wanted to do right here, because I want to take this circle and this line, and I actually want to try to cut off the side of this circle right here. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to identify the this area that I don't want messed around with as far as it being displayed. So I can do that by using my function and limiting the domain and the range. So you can see that I put this indicator here that says I want y less than or equal to 2x plus 7. Well, notice that my line is y equals 2x plus 7, and so I just want everything below that. And so I have put my limitation so that y is less than or equal to 2x plus 7. And so since this is 2x plus 7, I want everything on this side of it. But it's only represented by that circle, so only the circle part that's less than that. Okay, so now I want to cut off all this extra line. So all of the line above here and all the line below there. So I need to put some limitation on that line. And so when I put a limitation on it, I want to make sure that I cut it off here and cut it off there. So here I've put the limitation that I want this line, as long as it's less than or equal to my circle. So my circle, if I were to solve this for y, I would subtract x squared from both sides, and then I would take the square root, which is what I have up here. So that way, because remember my circle finished off like that, so I want my line just to be what's less than that circle line, which is just this little piece. So by implementing those two features, I've been able to take what was kind of a funny looking thing and I've limited it. Now the last thing I'm going to do is to just change the color of my red line so that it is also blue, and then I have my completed picture. Now I've added a couple of zigzags just by putting in some absolute values. So you'll notice down here I just added a few extra absolute value equations and put some limitations on them, because if I hadn't, those lines would have continued to go on, and so I chose to put some limitations on to get that little zigzag effect. And again, I can change them so that they're all the same color, and that way they'll kind of look like they go together. So let me just change those colors real quick, and then we'll see what that looks like. And then I'll show you another feature that if you click on this wrench on the right hand side, you can go to project mode, and that darkens all of your lines. You'll also notice that it has a grid. It shows a grid, and you can turn these axes on and off, so eventually when you draw your picture, you can get rid of all of that stuff so that it will allow you to have just your picture with nothing else there. So you see I've turned everything off, and so the picture is just what I have. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is once you're all finished everything, you need to export your picture. You need to either email it to me or download the image. So if you select email, you're going to have to put in my information. Okay, so you want to make sure to put lwesterfield@evangelacademy.com, and please indicate your name -DESMOS. If you do not put your name on it -DESMOS, I will not know it's from you, and I will not give you credit for it. Another way that you can do this, which I actually recommend because it's a little bit better, is that you select image. When you select image, it's going to bring you to this screen, and you don't need to print it. If you double click on the picture, it will allow you to download it. So that way you can actually have it on your desktop or on your hard drive somewhere, and that will then allow you to embed it into a document, resize it, do various things with it, and also keep it. So anyway, either one of those methods, but I prefer that it come to me as a embedded into a document so that you can add other features to your drawing.